Hello and welcome to this week's Daz tutorial. And this week we are going to be continuing our series on dForce, which is the physics engine that is included with Daz3d that you can use to simulate realistic physics on your figures. So if this is your first time here, don't forget to hit the like button if you get something out of this video. Also subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss one of my new uploads. And let's go ahead and jump right in. So in this one, I've already got my figure loaded in. She's already posed and dressed and ready to go. And I've also gone in ahead and applied dForce physics to her clothing. So if you need a refresher on how to do that, be sure you check my dForce Part 1 video. I will link to that above right now. So check that one out and then come right back here and we'll go to the next level of dForce. So I'm using the short Kaftan, which is the same article clothing that I used for the last video. And as I said, I've already, I think I'm using a different texture this time. So if it looks different, I've just got a different texture applied. But as I said, I've already got the physics applied. And this time we're going to look into doing like a wind effect or a breeze effect. So I got a question from a viewer a few weeks ago now about this specifically, and this is why I started the dForce series. As I started to research it, I found out you can do some really cool stuff with it. I really haven't used dForce a whole lot, but that's going to definitely become part of my standard toolkit from now on. Alright, so in order to apply our wind effect, the first thing that we need is a wind node. So we're going to go up to Create and scroll down to, or go down rather, to New dForce Wind Node, and we're going to click that. And we're just going to leave everything on the default right now and hit Accept. There we go. And let me switch off of my camera. I'm going to go to perspective view. I've already got my camera exactly where I want it for the final render. And so you can see that that wind node has created this thing, which is, it's kind of hard to tell here with the wireframe image, but this is supposed to be a fan, and then this is a wind tunnel. So this is the direction that the wind is going, just so you can see everything that it's going to hit. So of course it takes some processing power to apply dForce, so we won't be able to see this happen in real time. I'm going to give you some values to use that seem to work for me for this particular setup, but as with everything, the key is to experiment. Try different values, placement, angles, different articles of clothing, anything you can think of to get the effects that you want, and just play around with it and just kind of just figure out what everything does. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to move this back. So I'm going to use you can use the regular transform controls to move this wherever you want it. And this wind tunnel works kind of like the depth of field view, the f-stop that I went over in my depth of field tutorial. So basically on this one, let me go to my settings real quick. So yeah, if we go up to parameters, you'll have a dForce wind node, and then you have the standard settings that you can change, the transform settings, and then we also have this extra one down here called wind. And the first setting that we're going to look at is strength. We'll just take these from the top down. So right now the strength is set at 5 miles per hour, and when I was first doing this I couldn't get it to do anything, and that's because I did not see the strength and I left it at 5. So you're probably going to bump that way up. I think on my final render I ended up doing like around 45 to 46 miles per hour. The next control is diameter, which just controls the diameter size of your wind tunnel. So you can do a small, large, anywhere in between. It is kind of locked into a certain constraint. You might be able to increase or decrease that by turning limits off, but that should be plenty for most applications. All right, and then after that we have our fall-off controls. So this part gets just a little bit tricky. So the first one we have diameter fall off, and fall off basically is the point that your wind begins and the point at which it ends. So you want your figure, whatever you want to have wind applied to it. And by the way, this should go without saying, but just in case, your objects will only be affected by this if they are dForce objects. So right now, the only dForce objects that I have in here is the short Kaftan. Her hair is not a dForce object, so the wind's not going to affect it. But there are some other ways around that we'll talk about at the end. So in order for it to be affected by the wind, it has to be between these two areas. So this is the fall off start, and this is the fall off end. So you can change the point that the wind begins and ends by moving that back and forth. So there's the length, that'll increase the ending, and then the start basically moves the entire tunnel backwards and forwards. And then we have the diameter of your fall off. So basically, the way that the fall off works is that from the starting point to the end point, the wind will become less powerful in a linear fashion from beginning to end. So things that are towards the beginning, towards the start of the fall off, should have more of the wind effect applied. Things that are towards the end will have less of the wind effect applied. So again, just pretend that this is a huge fan right here. And of course, it's going to start off really strong and then get weaker and weaker and weaker. And then by this point, it should drop off entirely. So you want to make sure your figure, though, is between those 2 points, because that's another issue that I had, is I had assumed that as long as my fan icon was closer, then wind would be affected. So I was placing mine like this, and then nothing was happening because the wind doesn't actually start until the fall off start, from what I can tell. All right. So those are pretty much the basic fan controls. One limitation of this that I don't really like is you can't view through the wind turbine, through the wind node, like you can with lights, like with spotlights, or like I've got a distant light right now. So if I go to my perspective view and change that to distant light, like I can see exactly where my light is pointing. Unfortunately, you can't do that with the fan, the wind node, and setting that manually has proven to be really, really tricky. So there are 2 options that I have found for getting that positioned. The first one is just to position it from within your viewport, which again takes a little time. Another option that you can do is to create another camera. So it's just camera 2, and get that camera positioned exactly where you want the wind to blow. And then select that camera and then just copy all of the translate controls. You'll have to do all 6 of them, the X, Y, and Z translate and the X, Y, and Z rotate. And just copy those up here into the parameters of your wind controller, your wind node. I'm also showing up. There we go. So yeah, just go down to camera, again, copy all of these 3 things, and then just put it into the transform of your wind node. So in my experience, both of those options take about the same amount of time. Copying it from your camera translate controls might be just a little bit faster, but again, 6 in one, half a dozen in the other. Just do whatever works best for you. All right, so I've got a scene set up where I had everything pretty much where I wanted it, so I'm going to go ahead and load that scene in real quick. And before I do that, though, whenever you get your figure set up how you want, you still have to hit simulate on the left. So actually, I'll go ahead and show you that real quick. So I've got mine pretty much set up where she should get some nice wind effect, and I'm going to hit simulate just so we can see what that looks like. And there we go. And actually, for doing a quick setup, that one actually looks pretty good. I'm seeing a little bit of poke through there on the lower area, but yeah, that can be fixed relatively easily. Be sure to check my video on fixing poke through if you need any help with that. But yeah, you can kind of see the wind is blowing her Kaftan against her body, and then it's kind of flowing out the back there, and that is exactly what I was going for. There's from the back angle. It's not lit back here, but you can still see the wind kind of blowing it back in that direction. There we go. All right, and even though it looks pretty good, I'm going to go ahead and load in my finished render that I had set up, and we'll check that one out, and then we'll do an A/B comparison and see how they look together. And there we go. That is our final figure. So let me go ahead and pull up my parameters real quick, just so you can see the specific settings that I used. If you want to replicate that, yeah, for my wind, I did a lot faster than I thought I did. I did 130 miles per hour. Probably a little bit overkill, but it works. Diameter fall off is almost 61. 2.3 for the length, 1.18 for the start, and then about 46 for the strength. And I just left my gravity and air resistance at default, 1.0 and 0.15 for those, and that gave me the kind of windblown effect that I was looking for. So the only thing that I think could be better about this is the hair, but of course there are a couple of different options. The first option is to use a dForce compatible hair, which I'm not currently doing on this one. Another thing that you can do is to use the there we go, the actor displays. I mean, let me see if I can do that real quick. I might be able to make that one look kind of blown back. There we go. After playing with that a little bit, I was actually able to get a pretty convincing look from that just using her actor controls. And I actually went over those in my last video, so I'll be sure to link to that above if you want to check that one out, and I'll show you how to use some of those controls to get those effects. So my final render won't have that hair effect, but we'll go ahead and check out the A/B comparison real quick, and so we can see what the difference is. All right, so there is before the wind node was added, and then this is after the wind node was added. So you can see her dress, her kaftan being blown back. It was kind of switching back and forth. Yeah, so really cool wind effect. And there are lots of things that you can do with this. You could do this with like a cape if you have like a superhero scene that you want to do. Of course, with hair blowing back, any number of different things. Just make sure that any articles that you want to be affected like that are dForce compliant. So it should tell you in the product description when you buy it. Actually, they usually put it in the product name. Like that's a point of advertisement. They want you to know that their product is dForce compliant. So just be sure to look out for that. And that's about it. If you got something out of this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and visit me on Patreon at patreon.com/SteveDave83 if you want to support my channel monetarily. And as always, I put links to all of the products in the description below, and that's another great way to support me by visiting my affiliate links. I get a small commission if you visit those and purchase any of these items that I'm using, and it doesn't cost you anything extra. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.